Today's webinar is titled Achieving Perfect Equipment Performance Through TPM, Teamwork Between Production and Maintenance. Presenting the session today is the founder and president of CTPM, Ross Kennedy. Since CTPM's establishment in 1996, Ross has developed an improvement methodology that is centered around progressively developing and engaging all personnel to identify problems at the earliest possible time, solve them to root cause, and share the learning. Over this time, Ross has become recognised as Australasia's leading authority on total productive maintenance and CTPM's Australasian TPM lean approach to operational excellence. So with that being said, let's get started with today's session, and I'll now pass you over to Ross. Thanks, Ross.
Thanks, Nelson, and welcome everyone to our last webinar for the year and our number 93. So we've certainly been running a few over the years. Okay, today's topic, achieving perfect equipment performance through TPM. And I've used the acronym of TPM to infer teamwork between production and maintenance. And I'll explain a little bit more where that interpretation comes from as we get into the webinar. Originally, there's 5 points we've got here. Now, we had originally promoted this as what's on point 4, understanding the why of the 10 integrated ingredients needed to achieve TPM. But the feedback we got from our members and people who've signed up for the webinar asked a few more questions, and as such prompted me to change the name of the webinar and also change around the dot points. But hopefully you'll enjoy what we have to say today and you find it helpful. Just on that point about the questions, the 2 questions that prompted the change, one was Jason, where he said, encouraged by your statement acknowledging challenges with TPM in Australia culture, interested to hear more on how to overcome this. And Ashok from India needed to understand whys of the 10 ingredients of Australasian TPM, why these 10 ingredients have been selected, whereas JIPM, Japan Institute of Plant Maintenance, 8-pillar model covers holistically in all the areas. So both great questions, and we shall address those and hopefully make this a meaningful webinar for you. Just to start, this question of what does TPM stand for? And this is taken out of a section called Evolution of TPM from our strategic introduction to Australasian TPM and Lean online self-paced training course. TPM was originally known as total productive maintenance. I think we all understand that. However, due to the maintenance word, it is now often referred to as either total plant management, total productive manufacturing, total productive mining, total process management, or teamwork between production and maintenance. So why do we go away from the name total productive maintenance? Well, in our experience, this first came about in 1997 when we were working with a company called Nissan Casting Plant, a Japanese-owned business down in Melbourne, Victoria, and they were having trouble getting people to comprehend that TPM, which is a production initiative, having the word maintenance in it. And it was only when we researched a bit more and we realised that the word maintenance has a different meaning in Japan than it does in the Western world. And that is, from a Japanese perspective, maintenance means caring for an asset. From a Western perspective, maintenance means repairing an asset. So the intent of total productive maintenance, as it was developed by Toyota in the 60s to support the development of the Toyota production system, was that total productive maintenance inferred to them everyone becoming more productive by caring for the equipment, because if the equipment is not extremely reliable, you can't get one-piece flow working. So for that reason, that's where these other names come from. So we'll stick with today, teamwork between production and maintenance, because I think that really emphasises the need for total productive maintenance to be a production-driven initiative with maintenance supporting it and the two working in harmony. Some companies don't even refer to the 3-letter acronym of TPM, but just adopt it as a critical part of achieving operational excellence through ongoing improvement. So again, whether we stick to the acronyms or not, is a matter of choice at your site. Now, a slide we use a lot of our webinars, or start them, is what we call the 4 key parts of a TPM and Operation Excellence Improvement journey. And those 4 parts are, obviously, if you don't have leadership at all levels, from the site leadership right down to your frontline leaders, or some people call them wages leading hands, unless that leadership is right and they understand and promote and work towards the improvement vision, you're not going to get very far. Then you have your proactive improvement, and this is where, when you go and look at your organisation, and you'll notice on the left we talk about operations capability rating. This is a tool we use many sites. It's available from CTPM, which looks at, or gets you to do a self-rating on how good's your quality, how good is your response to customer, how good do you engage your people. And what we find when we do that on a world-class scale, the average company in Australia comes in at around 50%. And that's why we've got this chart set up where the current is about 50%. So yes, we want to use proactive improvement to take us to a higher level of our improvement vision. However, what we've learned is that you don't get the reactive improvement right, and this is all the day-to-day stuff. And when something goes wrong, rather than just fix it, but instigate actions to stop it from happening again, you're going to use up a lot of time that you can't put into proactive improvement. And again, the very bottom, stable production plan, if you're running around firefighting because the production plan gets changed all the time, you don't have time for your people to put into proactive improvement. So that's why there's 4 key parts. The actual total model is a lot more complex, but we've run webinars explaining how all those parts work together, so we won't be doing that today. What we're interested in is, from a proactive improvement, TPM is this part here, and this is our CTPM activities and focus framework for Australasian TPM and Lean. And so that's when we go down the TPM path, we have always looked at it from and you'll see the focus being production activities, so focusing on the production area, which is your focused equipment and process improvement, cross-functional team improvement, followed by work area management, which is an enhanced 5S that covers all shifts and improves communication between shifts, etc., rather than just make the place look tidy. And finally, what we call operator equipment management, again, getting away from that maintenance word, autonomous maintenance, which is what the Japanese call it. We found, again, at Nissan casting plant, rather than use language like 5S and autonomous maintenance, and keep in mind we had an Australian workforce that were owned by Japanese, they did not like this Japanese being imposed on them. We came up with this language. You have your production support activities, which is maintenance, is critical, and then any new equipment, and also support departments like the lab, etc. And then you have value stream management activities, which is really looking at the whole lean part of the journey. And then underpinning it, people and leadership development, which is, as we all know, the Toyota production system was based on how to become the lowest cost manufacturer, not by cutting costs, but by eliminating waste through human capital development, relying on everyone in the company to find the quality problems at the earliest possible time, and if necessary, pull the cord to stop production if there was a problem, rather than just work around it or pass it downstream. So that's the model. If we go back, because it was raised about the JIPM model, the JIPM model's on the left. That's the 8-pillar model. What we've done is created our 10 improvement activities, and you'll notice that the reason we've got 2 extra ones in there is work area management, or enhanced 5S. Now, it's interesting, when you read the first Japanese textbook that came out by Mr. Nakajima, TPM development plan, it refers to 5S, one little paragraph in the book that says, oh, we just assume everyone has 5S in place. Right? In other words, we have the discipline within the production areas to handle taking TPM on board. And in a lot of Australian companies, we don't have that. That's why we had to put it in there. And we had to do it so it went across all shifts, because a lot of the early work out of Japan is based on like 1-shift operations. And the last one we added on was value stream management, which was simply to bring in the lean thinking into the organisation. And we had to change the order because we can't have safety as number 8 in Australia. We have to have it as number 1. So that's the difference between the model of the JIPM and CTPM. But what's really important is to understand this bit about culture difference, and as Jason raised in his question, understanding what is this culture issue that we have in Australia compared to Japan. And when you talk about workplace culture, what we've found is there's probably 3 key elements to that. One is the way we communicate. You know, if you're in a positive culture, positive communications, respect for people, etc. Second thing is engagement. People all heading in the same direction, going for the same improvement vision, all on the same page, and all involved in improvement activities. And finally, problem solving, being able to address issues so they stop them from coming back again. And they're the things that they've found that make up a workplace culture. And if you've got poor problem solving, like reactive situation where things go wrong all the time, you're not going to have a good culture. So they're the ingredients. So let's look at the difference of what this means from a Japanese perspective to Australia. And keeping in mind, TPM was developed in the 60s and 70s. So when you go to Japan in the 70s and you walk into a Japanese factory, all you see is Japanese people. Walk into a factory in Australia or New Zealand, and you often see a multicultural or United Nations. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. It's great, in fact, you know, because we're multicultural, brings great depth to our culture in Australia. So I'm all for multicultural, but when it comes to trying to introduce something new like TPM, you got to keep in mind, in Japan, they can go and talk to their workforce and explain something, and if one person gets it, they all get it. They've all got the same background of education and social thinking. You go to Australia and you get a group or a team of people in the workplace and explain to them what TPM is about and what you want to do. A few of them might get it, but I'm sure there'll be a number of them, because they come from a different way of looking at the world, won't get it. And you've got to address that very, very carefully to get everyone on board. The other issue you have is in Japan, if the supervisor or manager comes and says, hey, we're going to go and introduce this new concept of TPM, the workforce tend to have high respect for their supervisors and managers because they've been there for a long time. The supervisors work their way up. The managers often are promoted with further education, of course, to become a manager. And if you think of Toyota, the youngest serving CEO of Toyota has 38 years with the company. Right? Now, therefore, when the managers and supervisors come out with, oh, we're going to introduce something different, the workforce respect that they know they've been there and, yep, tell us what to do. Australia, New Zealand, totally different. A lot of our supervisors and a lot of our managers are being brought in, haven't started at the shop floor, haven't worked their way up through the company. There's always exceptions, but a lot of them aren't. So what happens is when the manager comes along and says, oh, we've got this great new idea, TPM, everyone goes, oh, a bit suspicious of this new manager guy or this new supervisor. What's he trying to do? Make us work harder. So, hey, what are we going to get out of it, boss? What's in it for us? Why should we support what you're saying? And that's what you find in a lot of, what you find in a lot of workplaces. And the last one is address root causes. The Japanese are very, very respectful, and if someone has a mistake or makes a mistake, they respect that as a part of learning, and that's a good thing. So get in, have a go. If it doesn't work, that's your learning. That's wonderful. However, don't let it happen a second time. Don't make the same mistake twice. So therefore, they're very disciplined. Every time something does go wrong, they capture the learning and they ask why, until they get to the root cause and they eliminate that problem from ever appearing again. Here in Australia and New Zealand, much of our, I guess, convict culture being also, you know, the colony from years back where we had to be very independent, we have developed this incredible Australian ingenuity. In other words, we just work around things. Something goes wrong, we find a way around it. We go and get the duct tape out, we go and get the fencing wire or whatever, and we get it sorted out and move on. We don't worry about wasting time going why to get to the problem from happening again. And if it happens again, it just means we look good because we can do it quicker. So hence, the way you approach TPM in Australia and New Zealand, we realised had to be different from following the Japanese textbook. And that's why we created our Hamburger, what we often refer to as a Hamburger model, because all those activities have to work together. And that's really what a hamburger is all about. You get a hamburger, you squeeze it, and all the flavors come together. And that's why we have hamburgers. That's why we thought that's probably a much better symbol of what's got to be done rather than having some Parthenon of standalone pillars. Now, getting to the questions and or issues for this webinar. Why doing the occasional clean for inspection doesn't work? Well, this has got to do with, I guess, Professor Jeffrey Leica, gentleman who wrote the original The Toyota Way back in 2004, which is quite a revelation book of 14 management principles to support, that supports the Toyota Way or Toyota production system or lean. And then later on, he kept writing other books and teaming up with people. And this one, The Toyota Way to Continuous Improvement, was quite some years later. And it was all about reflecting on case studies of where they've gone and implemented the Toyota Way into workplaces throughout America and even in Australia, and my insights written up in the book. But in all cases, it didn't sustain. And what he was talking about was in the book of, well, what's the learning? Why hasn't it sustained? And this is where he came up with this concept of mechanistic versus organic approaches to improvement. Mechanistic is a linear view of the workplace. In other words, treating the workplace like a machine that requires tools to fix. Hence, when problems occur, pick the best tool and solve it. Oh, the equipment's not working well, we'll go and do a clean for inspection. Oh, whatever. All right? Oh, you know, we've got lubrication. Oh, we'll get the operators to do lubrication. That's what TPM is all about. And you get all these crazy actions. Organic is a systemic view of the workplace. It's a system, a living system, treating the workplace like a living organism that requires nurturing, hence recognizing many activities need to be working in concert. And that's been our learning with TPM. It's all those activities or pillars or what you want to call them, all have to work in concert together. They are not standalone activities. And the learning from Professor Leica was that mechanistic approaches do not sustain. So organic thinking, and he goes on to talk about organic thinking, it's like thermodynamics and entropy. Now, I don't know if any of you have done thermodynamics at university or your engineering qualifications or heat transfer, but entropy can be viewed as the amount of energy in a physical system that is not available to do work. For example, the theory was when they first invented the steam engine, and this is where this concept of entropy and thermodynamics came from, is when they invented the steam engine, was that the thought was the more steam you put into the engine, the faster it will go and the more energy you get coming out. What they realized, you get to a certain point where you pump more energy in, and all that happens is the machine or the steam engine doesn't go any faster or doesn't get more torque. All it does is it heats up, and that's the energy that isn't available to do work. That's I guess the concept of entropy and where it came along. But they also created in thermodynamics different laws, a bit like the laws of gravity, the laws of thermodynamics, which is heat transfer. Entropy or disorder will naturally increase over time. Okay, so what that means is the amount of energy that's not going to be good for work will naturally increase over time. A simple example of that is you put ice melting in a warm room is a common example of increasing entropy. You get the water, ice cubes in the water in a room or warm room, and what happens is the ice melts, right? The water molecules in the ice increase in randomness, order leading to disorder, and gradually that water will go to room temperature. And that's what the second law is all about. Temperature will equalize in the workplace, whether it be hot to cold or cold to hot. You put a hot cup of coffee on your table and you've got a reasonable room temperature, well, not room temperature, but a cool room, the coffee will cool down. And that's just the second law of thermodynamics. So what happens in the workplace is you have a work group, and the mechanistic approach to improvement is go and have an event. Let's have a random claim for inspection. Let's go do a Kaizen blitz. Let's put the energy in and we get improvement. But the blitz is over, the claim for inspection's over, we go away, we move somewhere else to another area, and guess what? We naturally, second law of thermodynamics, the energy, the improvements will just drift away. So the organic approach or learning has been, we go into weekly improvement activities focusing on developing people. That's what the Toyota production system is all about, human capital development. And you get your improvements, but you keep the improvements. And this is what we call ongoing improvement as opposed to continuous improvement. Continuous improvement is often interpreted by many companies as, oh, we'll go and work in area 1 and do claim for inspection. Then we'll go over to area 2 and we'll go and do a claim for inspection, for example. Right? And then we'll go over to area 3 and we'll do a claim for inspection. Boy, we're doing continuous improvement. The trouble is area 1 just falls back into decay because you've taken the heat away. Right? And that's why we've called it ongoing improvement. You start in the area and you keep regular claim for inspections going. So why giving equipment checklists created by maintenance to operators don't work? We first saw this over at Alcoa, Kwinana plant in Western Australia, when we were working over there, invited over to help them understand what TPM was all about, or correct interpretation of TPM. What they had done, and this is the before photos, they had got their maintenance people to go and create some very, very good, technically good, inspection sheets for the operators to be able to wander around the plant and do some basic inspections to pick up on problems at the earliest possible time so maintenance could go and do something about it. And this way maintenance, they could reduce the maintenance people involved in doing inspections. So save some money, get the operators to do it. The only trouble is the operators had no ownership whatsoever to the inspection lists. Right? They hadn't been properly trained, hadn't done claim for inspections to start learning about the equipment. They'd just been given these lists. So guess what happened? And what we found out happened and what was reported to us happened. They'd sit in the crib room and tick them off and hand them back to the silly maintenance people. It was only when we got TPM going correctly down the proper pathway that, yes, this is what the after photos that they showed at our forum one year. And the interesting thing is that it's not a photo the day after they painted the thing. And two, TPM, you don't have to paint things for TPM. It's good to have things, you know, spruced up so you can see problems at the earliest possible time. But that's about 6 months after they'd actually done the painting. You can see the operators were really taking care of the equipment and picking up on problems at the earliest possible time. And they created their own checklists then, that they had ownership to. So thinking TPM as a tool focused on autonomous maintenance doesn't work either. TPM is about prevention at source for equipment, fixing damaged grease lines rather than failed bearings. In other words, if you fix a grease line up that's being damaged and the grease isn't flowing to the bearing and you fix it quick enough before the bearing runs out of grease, it's a very small, simple job to fix up the bent grease line or the damaged grease line. Wait until the bearing fails and you're up for big, expensive repairs. So TPM involves a number of challenges, including, and this is what Toyota discovered as they were implementing TPM, train the operators to know what to look for regarding equipment defects. So how do we train the operators? And regular weekly clean for inspections is the most effective way. Change the equipment so it's easy for operators to find the problems. Right? So who's got to do that? Well, that's the maintenance issue, to go in and start putting perspex in instead of having metal guards, etc. Create a maintenance support capability to respond to small problems and issues identified by the operators. The operators see a damaged grease line, they go and raise a work order, and that goes in the system, and oh, that's just a damaged grease line, that's low priority. doesn't get attended to, the bearings fail by the time the maintenance get there, and the operator isn't going to report anything else. So we've really got to change the way we approach that. Stabilise the production plan to ensure regular clean for inspections to develop the operators and maintainers. You always want the maintenance people there with the operators. I was at one site once where we had some clean for inspections. We did a couple. Everyone's getting really enthused about this whole concept. Then there was an issue, maintenance couldn't turn up, and all the operators say, well, what's the point? We haven't got our maintenance people here supporting us. And they just lost interest. Ensure new equipment is designed such that it's easy for operators to find the equipment. That's if you're bringing new equipment in. So hence TPM was developed based on integrated activities involving production, maintenance, production planning, engineering and procurement. It's not just operators going out there and doing a clean for inspection. So understanding the why of the 10 integrated ingredients needed to achieve TPM. So why did we come up with this model of the 10 integrated ingredients, which is what we call a sequence model? People were trying to work out, you've got all these 10 activities in the hamburger, what sequence do you do them in? Right? And what else needs to be considered? So this is what we found before commencing operator equipment management or autonomous maintenance. We need to increase OEE of the equipment by at least 10% so we can stop the equipment for 5%, i.e. 2 hours a week, without impacting on achieving the production plan. Right? So that's why we do cross-functional team activity first up without having to stop the equipment from running, interfering with the equipment. Free up time of production frontline leaders. Right? They're your wages leading hands, so the absolute critical role in TPM. And in production area-based team improvement activity. And if we haven't got that structure right to start with, and then secondly, freeing up some of their time to standardized leader work, you're not going to get very far. And you've got to free up time maintenance. Otherwise, you want maintenance to start fixing up bent grease lines, that's extra work for them, and they're going to, well, you're just loading us up. All right? So again, we've got to free up time. Break down any barriers between production and maintenance. Right? The old I operate, you fix type mentality we see in some organisations. Again, cross-functional teams are focused on common goal of improving OEE is a great means to do that. Ensure operators can operate the plant and equipment to agreed standards. We've seen many situations where operators don't really understand the functioning of the equipment. A bit like, Formula One. You can put the perfect car together, but if your driver ain't the top person and knows what they're doing, they'll make a horrible mess of it. Ensure maintenance have ownership to the areas they are going to support. Not just, any maintenance person go over and help the production people. They've got to build relationships up. So they've got to have this very strong ownership between the groups. Ensure there's good communications and agreement across shifts. So it's not just doing TPM and autonomous maintenance or operator equipment management on day shift and forget about the afternoon and night shift people. Everyone's got to be involved. Everyone's got to be doing it. Otherwise, the other shifts won't support it. And the day shift people will say, well, what's the point? Ensure operators can demonstrate the discipline to keep their work areas to an agreed standard of industrial housekeeping, a place for everything and everything in its place. The point here is, if the operators can't put brooms back in the right place, don't let them loose on the equipment, because they'll probably likely go and splash cleaning fluid all over sensors or whatever and bugger up the machinery. So if they can't demonstrate a disciplined approach to sorting out their work area, don't let them near the equipment. And ensure there is a stable production plan for at least 2 days each week to allow regular clean for inspections at a set time and day each week, which are not disrupted. In other words, so maintenance can always be there because they know there's a fixed time to turn up. So what we're doing is we've taken that model and said, okay, how can we put that into some sort of sequence, getting the sequence right? So first of all, we have preparation. Effective daily management. If we don't get that right, you're not going to free up your frontline leaders and their time, because they'll be running around fixing up problems that keep reoccurring. Also, it makes and forces you into getting a correct structure for your production area-based teams. You want to stabilise the production plan, at least 50% of the plan. And then you want to do the focus equipment and process improvement and look at how do we, in a cross-functional environment, look at OEE, understand all the losses, understand what the ideal or what the vision is for OE performance based on agreed assumptions, and get it up by at least 10%. Then we need to work on maintenance. Right? Now, by this stage, because you've had maintenance people involved in the cross-functional team, they'll start to become more receptive to, hey, let's look at how maintenance works. And we use self-assessment surveys to, first of all, understand what the maintenance time lost is. And what we found is just every company we go to with a maintenance group, we ask them to fill in a simple survey of where have you lost your time for the last week. For example, can't find the tools, being told, not told what's wrong when I go to a job and have to come back and get different information or tools, etc. What we found is in most organisations, maintenance, not because they want to, because they get stuffed around, loses up to 35% of their time each week. Cut that back down to 10 by doing improvements, and you've freed up 25% maintenance resources to support your TPM journey. Then you've got to get production capability, and sometimes we'll do production capability and maintenance capability at the same time. Operator competence, making sure the operators really understand how to run the equipment consistently across all shifts, and that's using very good standard operating procedures with the explanation of why each step is necessary, and getting all the operators properly trained, and then getting your work area management or enhanced 5S, so that they've shown that they've got discipline and communication between the shifts to tackle the equipment. Then you can get into operator equipment management or autonomous maintenance to achieve TPM excellence. If we don't follow that wheel and get all those things in place, right, autonomous maintenance ain't going to sustain, and it's not going to give you the results you need. Now, that question about where does all this fit into the JIP model? Well, pretty close, right? Focused improvement, yes, that's number 3. Autonomous maintenance, obviously that's our steps 8, 9, and 10, which we have at the end, not as number 2. Planned maintenance, very important, 4 and 5. Education and training, that's what 6 is all about. 5, we don't have, because this is for existing equipment. We have in our Hamburger new equipment management, but we don't cover it in this model, which is designed for existing equipment. TPM and support is originally was all about planning, getting stable production plans, so that's number 2. And quality maintenance and is about getting perfect quality, not maintenance during quality, but quality care. It's the proper interpretation of that. And safety environmental management. Well, that's what effective daily management's about. The first thing you focus on is safety, and second is quality, and then delivery, of course. So yes, there is a comparison. What we're trying to do is to get people to do in a certain sequence, because you're trying to develop your operators, and that's what it's all about, human capital development or people development. And the last point, the importance of ongoing improvement involving everyone, well, that's organic approach. That's what we talked about. You need to get everyone involved. So hopefully that's given you a bit of insight into our learning about TPM and autonomous maintenance, and getting it to work and sustain in organisations. And we've certainly achieved that with many, many sites and seen some unbelievable results. How can we help you? Online self-paced accredited yellow belt training course. I mentioned some slides out of that. This really gives you a full picture of what our learning has been about getting this understanding of Australasian TPM and lean, or getting that TPM to really work. And as Nelson mentioned earlier, we've got a 50% belated Black Friday discount until Christmas Eve. So if you do want to sign up, the course, you've got 12 months to do it, self-paced. So great opportunity to sign up a lot of your people on site and let them work through it together as something to do in the next year. But take advantage of the discount now before Christmas. We have our site membership and our site subscription. And again, we've got this special 50% belated Black Friday discount up until Christmas Eve, right, to dive into that. So with that, we'll invite any questions. While we're waiting for some questions, There was a third question that came in from Surab in India. What are the top 3 strategies, tactics, tricks to achieve all this in teams consisting of predominantly temporary workers? Well, the first thing, we worked with a client in New Zealand some years back called Sedenko, which processes vegetables. It's seasonal business, so they get pumpkins and chew them up into pumpkin soup, so to speak. They get corn and put it together in plastic sealed bags for cooking, etc. So they process a lot of vegetables, and that's seasonal. So their normal workforce is probably about 80 people. In season, which is about 6 months of the year, they've got 400 people on site. So they've certainly got a lot of temporary people coming in. What they learned was in their production areas, every production area, defined area, needed a frontline leader or leading hand wages who was permanent. And then you could fill in with, and what they tried to do is have about 2 people permanent in each area, and they would then fill the rest in with temporary people, up to a team of 8, right, as a maximum. And those 2, and depending on the more permanent you can have, the more success you'll have. So if you have 3 or 4 permanent people, and would be more ideal, and then bring in another 4 temporary, but that allowed them to establish all the standards for their work area management 5S and their TPM and all the visual controls on the equipment and whatever, and they trained the temporary people about it, and the temporary people, you come and work for us, you follow our rules, and these are the rules of how we work in our area. And they try to get the same temporary people to stay in the same area, and that seemed to work very, very well for them, and they got some really great success implementing TPM. Okay, with that, hopefully that answers that one, and if there's any more questions, happy to address.
Okay, thank you very much, Ross. As Ross mentioned, if you have any questions, please type it into the question pane on the control panel. You'll be happy to respond. We'll just keep it open for a little bit, Ross. And while we wait for any other questions to come through, a reminder that a link to the recording of today's webinar will be provided in a follow-up email to you later today. So please feel free to watch it again and share it with your colleagues. It doesn't seem, Ross, that we have any more questions. So I think
we'll wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a great and happy New Year. And look forward to catching up with you all again next year.
Yes, that's. So I guess we'll bring an end to the session today, and we hope you take some learnings away from the session. We encourage you to complete the feedback form after the session to let us know how it went. And if you have any topic suggestions for next year, please note them down so we can work on them and hopefully bring them to fruition. Thanks you once again for attending. Enjoy the rest of your day and have a safe and Merry Christmas. Thank you.